All right, college football roundup. Let's preview some of these week 2 matchups. Got to start in Austin. Number 1 Alabama travels to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns. Alabama is a 20-point favorite currently, and I am so interested in this football game. And one of maybe the thing I'm most intrigued by, it's not Quinn Ewers, it's Texas's defense, right? Like, have they gotten any better? No, has Gary Patterson made a difference? Year 2 in Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. Can they slow down Bryce Young and that Bama offense at all? Right? That's like the main thing that I'll be watching. But then there's also Texas's offensive line, which I think that's going to determine this football game, because Texas O-line versus Will Anderson, DJ Dale, Dallas Turner, all those other creatures that Alabama has along their defensive front. I don't see Texas's offensive line being able to block those guys. I just don't see it, especially with the way that the true freshmen looked in the opener. Like, they had some bright spots, but there were also some spots where you're like, oh, yeah, those guys look like true freshmen. So I don't think it's going to go very well for him, Ted. And I just don't know how big of an impact Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy can have if Bama's defensive line is living in the backfield. You know, like, Quinn Ewers may be the least of their worries in this game, but I mean, he could have a miserable time on Saturday. I just don't see it for the Longhorns. I don't know if this is going to quite look the way that Georgia and Oregon looked, but it could kind of look that way.
Well, a lot of that really depends on Texas and how much better they've gotten. And Texas is a team that it's all about mindset. When they think they're good and everything's kind of going their way, they can actually show up and look like a really good football team. If things are falling apart on them, they scatter, right? And they don't show up. That's how you can take a team that looked really good to start off last season, but finished 5-7. You have a 5-7 team that's playing one of the biggest favorites to win a national championship in a really, really long time. That is experienced, that have last year's best offensive player in the country, best defensive player in the country. They've played in a ton of big games. The atmosphere in Austin, Texas is not going to be intimidating at all for Alabama. They're more detailed. They're more disciplined. They're tougher. They're more talented. You can go down any avenue you want, and it is advantage Alabama. And you take an Oregon team that's got really good coaching and was a good squad last year, lost some guys. There's no doubt lost some guys, but they got absolutely assaulted by Georgia. Assaulted. And I would say the edge in this game is heavier in Alabama's favor than the Georgia-Oregon game was in Georgia's favor. So that doesn't mean the game's going to unfold like that, but you can go position by position, player by player, coach by coach, situation by situation. And I don't know that you ever at any point find any edge in Texas's favor. And in most of them, it is a dramatic favorite to Alabama. Just look at the quarterback matchup. The most important matchup on the field. It ain't close. So I don't know. There's no margin of victory in Alabama's favor that would surprise me.
I wonder how Texas even keeps it close, like what has to happen? Is it a big special teams play? Like we saw special teams play huge roles in
Yeah.
some of those week 1 games. Like, is it a block punt, a muffed punt for Bama, like something like that can really swing things for Texas? But
It just
yeah, I mean,
seems too easy, doesn't it?
yeah,
It
I
just seems
just
too easy.
it does. It feels like Alabama is just going to beat the absolute shit out of Texas. But I don't know, man. Like I I do think there's a conversation to be had whether you would take Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson. I'm probably taking Bijan. He's awesome. But other than that, I
Well, but okay, and that's true. And maybe the
I
position
knew what you
comparison.
meant, though. I knew what you meant.
Yeah. Why would you rather take Bijan and his offensive line against Bama's defense, or Gibbs and his offensive line against Texas's
Not
defense?
not even a conversation. So
Right.
I
You just
it,
never know.
well,
It,
there's a reason they play the games, though,
that's
right? So
right.
that's why I assume you're going to be watching just like I am. So
Well, I think it's interesting that I've heard some people like national pundits, and I don't know like what the reasoning is, but try and act like Alabama is just not going to care about this game. How, what world are they living in? There's, of course, Alabama cares about this game. Nick Saban cares deeply about this game. You don't think that showing up in the state of Texas, where there's more top tier high school football recruits than anywhere else, and stomping the flagship program of that state that's about to come into your conference, you don't think that Nick Saban wants to go in there and prove a point, especially against a former coordinator of his that went to Texas touting a bunch of Alabama players and winning a national championship as something to build on there at Texas? You don't think that Nick Saban, as psychotic as he is thinking about that?
he's going to try to score 100. This
I
is
think,
like the Texas. This is like the Texas takeover year for Saban, right? Because
yeah,
he's going to want to embarrass Texas, and then here in a couple weeks, when A&M comes to Tuscaloosa, he's going to try to beat them by 1,000 too. So, like,
there's no doubt.
I'm with you. I think that man is on a mission to show the top prospects in Texas that Bama is still Bama. I'm
Right.
scared for Texas. I really am.
I know it. You got a juggernaut coming in against a team that is maybe improved over last year. We don't even know if they are. I'm not even. I don't know that that's something that's a guarantee. I'm more concerned about whether or not Texas can beat Kansas than I am if they can keep it close against Alabama.
Yeah, I wonder how many times Quinn Ewers is going to get sacked, because he's not I watched a lot of that opener against ULM. He does not move well. Like, he doesn't move like some of the best quarterbacks we see in college football. Like, you compare it to Dylan Gabriel, it's not even close. Like, DG's a
Right.
way better athlete than Ewers. So even if those guys are getting beat at the line of scrimmage, like I don't think he can really get away. So I don't know. It's
Yeah, and that's what's interesting too is, I don't necessarily think Texas is a very good program, but their coaches aren't dumb. They've got a good coaching staff. They're not gonna go 5-man protection all game and let Dallas Turner and Will Anderson come off the edge without someone there helping. So there's probably going to be a lot of max protect, but you're hurting. I mean, you don't just get to max protect and not have any consequences from that, right? They're going to be over and under every single receiver out there on the back end, and they're still going to be getting to the quarterback, and you're going to be throwing into double coverage with guys over and under all the way across your 3 receivers. So I don't know.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that Sark's had a long time to put together an offensive game plan, and clearly has a very good understanding of what Saban wants to do defensively. Remember, Ajay Hall is back with Texas. He was just there last year. So, like, they're going to have a bunch of information about what Alabama does. I just don't know if it's going to help them that much because Alabama's just going to have them outmanned. So I don't know, but it's a game we've been talking about all off season, and it's here, man. I can't wait. It's going to be
awesome.
I just don't know how people are going to react if Texas actually plays well and it's a good game. I don't
Hey, if there's one thing that we know about Texas, it's that, and this is a hallmark of a really crappy program. They are Jekyll and Hyde. If it's a big game against someone that they, I guess, deem a worthy opponent, they could show up and happen to look very good. They do it against Oklahoma every year, right? A 5-7 Texas team had Oklahoma down 21 points last year, and it looked like it was going to be an absolute blowout. So, I mean, that's the thing that you just don't know with Texas is they are up and down like crazy.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. All right, let's get to the next game. Number 24 Tennessee travels to take on number 17 Pitt. The Fighting Josh Heupels are 6.5-point favorite. And I think it's safe to say that the Vols didn't have to exert as much energy in their opener. They just smacked the hell out of Ball State. But, hey, Pitt did have a few extra days to get some rest after that awesome backyard brawl last Thursday night. I do wonder how much Pitt's players partied after that game, what the old recovery process was like for that group. But really, when I look at this one, man, Hendon Hooker's the difference for me. I mean, he's great. I love watching him play. I think he's improved as a passer just from the things I've heard Heupel say about him, from the way he looked against Ball State. He can just make so many things happen, not only with his arm as a passer, but he's a big weapon as a runner. And, you just look at that QB matchup, right? Keaton Slovis or Hendon Hooker. I just think that Hooker, he's just such a bigger difference maker than Keaton Slovis. Plus, Pitt couldn't run it against West Virginia. And I'm not trying to belittle West Virginia's defensive front. I like the Stills guy. They played their ass off in that game. But Tennessee's got a little more beef up front than West Virginia's got. So can Pitt run it effectively against the Vols when they couldn't run it against West Virginia? I don't know, but I do think Tennessee will be able to run it more effectively, right? That combo of Jamari Small, Jalen Wright, I mean, both of those guys can go a little bit. So I like Tennessee in this game, and Hendon Hooker is pretty much the main reason. I think he's really, really good.
He's stud. He's super efficient. He is like the biggest unknown commodity after the season he had last year. I mean, it was incredible. It was like, he had 20, 25, 28 touchdowns through the air, 4 interceptions, added another 12 rushing touchdowns to go with that. Incredibly efficient with the football, had a high, I think he was 75% completion percentage a year ago. So I expect him to continue that. And, I thought Pitt's front seven was actually pretty impressive against West Virginia. But here's the thing, and we know this, what's the neutralizer with this offense? Tempo, right? They're going to go tempo. They're going to throw some up-tempo stuff at them, run a bunch of plays in a short amount of time. They're going to run it. They're going to throw RPOs. They're going to throw bubbles to one side. They're going to run a quick to the other, make that defense pursue all across the football field and wear them out. I'm a bit biased. I'm really high on Tennessee this year. I think they'll win the game, and I think they may win it comfortably.
I'm with you. And I don't know if it's my newly acquired SEC bias or what, but I don't know, man. The SEC, they're just everybody's smacking people around right now. I mean, I know we're only 1 week into the season, but I just can't unsee what Georgia did to Oregon. I just can't. And Tennessee, a lot of people think Tennessee is a team that can challenge for the East. So
East is interesting, man. Florida's looking good too. It's fascinating. I don't even know like who's the bad team in the East.
I I mean, I suppose well, Vanderbilt, they're not good,
Right. But
but
like South Carolina they're a solid team. Now they weren't great in week 1, but the East, Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia,
and we're gonna
they're
find
all
out
impressive.
more about Missouri this week. They've got K-State this week, right?
K-State, yep.
So, I mean, we'll find out more about Missouri this week. So, yeah,
Yep.
I think the easy answer is Vanderbilt, though. But other than
Yeah.
that, yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right,
But
one more game.
you got to remember though, Vanderbilt's about to be the best program in the country.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Clark Lee said that. That happened. You're right. Okay, one more game I want to touch on. Number 9 Baylor heads to Provo, Utah to take on number 21 BYU. BYU a 3.5 point home favorite. I think we're going to learn a lot about Baylor in this game. Right? And if you didn't happen to tune in to any of their game against Albany, let me just I'll fill you in. Blake Shapen looked awesome. I mean, pushing the ball, carrying out extended fakes in that outside zone scheme, boot game, move the launch point and just letting it rip down the field. Had a couple of just beautiful deep balls to Monterey Baldwin and Hal Presley. I mean, he looked polished. I mean, I'm not a quarterback guru, but like he just looks like everything is synced up the right way when he's throwing the football. Like it just looks. I feel like it looks the way it's supposed to look. But this game, you look at these two teams and what they have at the line of scrimmage. I think it's going to come down who can run the football and who can stop the run. Right. And Jaron Hall, BYU's quarterback, he adds to that BYU run game pretty significantly. Like that guy is an absolute athlete. Shapen really doesn't add to the run game the way that Hall does, but I can't wait to watch the grown men from BYU and all these vets from Baylor just smack into each other at the line of scrimmage. It's going to be awesome.
No, this is a really good matchup of line of scrimmage play, some good skill position play. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but I just feel like Baylor's got more overall team speed than BYU. And maybe it's just the bias that I've watched way more Baylor than I have BYU. So
did
that's
you
just
see
the
what
way I feel.
did you see what Aranda said? It was a week or two ago. I talked about it on my Big 12 show. He said they had like a record number of guys run over 20 miles per hour. It's like 20 plus guys that they got hitting over 20 miles per hour in practice on the GPS stuff. Wow. They got some dudes that can absolutely go.
Yeah, and that's been a hallmark of Baylor teams for quite some time now. They got really, really good team speed. And I think that's going to be the difference. And like Shapen, we don't have very much info on him, but what we do have, he has been absolutely explosive at quarterback with yards and touchdowns, pushing the ball down the field. Like that's the scary part. Like last year Baylor had an incredible running game, but they couldn't push the ball down the field at all. You add that dynamic to their offense, it just makes their running game that much more dangerous. And I got to go with Baylor. In all of these games, and it's probably going to be a disaster. And this is how you know it's a disaster. But I think Alabama destroys Texas. I think Tennessee handles Pitt convincingly. And I kind of feel the same with Baylor, even though they're a 3.5 point dog.
Yeah. And
I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I think Baylor's going to win. Now, that could be my Big 12 bias, but I know that's a tough football team along the line of scrimmage. And like you said, the assumption is that Baylor's got more speed at the skill positions. Right now, the Nakua kid from BYU, I really like him. He's a good player. Hall, the quarterback, he's really fun to watch. But Baylor just always has really fast dudes, man. And if
And they're tough. They are a physical group. No.
should we factor in the altitude? Do we have to factor in the altitude? I don't even know how to factor in altitude, but there is altitude in Utah, I'm told.
Yeah, there's some altitude. I factor it in Baylor's favor because Shapen's going to be able to throw the ball farther, and the team speed is going to be that much bigger of a factor.
They're going to run even faster in the thin air. Hey, maybe that's how it works, dude. You would love how they set up all their play action stuff against Albany. I really do. I love watching Grimes call plays and the way that they set some of that stuff up. And it was just like textbook. Gash him outside zone, and I know it's Albany, but gash him outside zone, gash him outside zone. Play action fake looks exactly like it. He just sets up and just lets it fly down the field. Perfect.
Is it
You're just like, oh my
the
God.
G pass where it feels like boot to the underneath guys, but it's just like a half rollout and he hits the deep crosser bomb?
It's just beautiful. It's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous football is what it is.